There's a siege of sorts going on in Chicago. I mean, there has been for a long time. People who live in areas that aren't where the Pritzkers live know about the siege of gang violence, which continues to create the horrible circumstance around which Jesus weeps, that young black men are the number one cause of death of young black men. But now Chicago is under siege by a different force, and a woke fake pastor, a Lutheran in-pastor of the Church of Christ Church Lutheran in Blaine, Minnesota, talked about this siege going on right now.
Because Bishop Yehiel Curry is a black man, wise and pragmatic people have already created a support and safety network for him, his family, and others who will now invariably receive hate speech and endure hate crimes. Bishop Curry's hometown, Chicago, is under siege by federal troops ordered to remove citizens and non-citizens alike in a hate-filled effort to rid this country of every non-English speaking brown person we can find.
How can you tell she's a fake pastor? Gosh, she's lying from the pulpit. Citizens are not ordered to be removed. Black and brown people are not being removed for being black and brown. Speaking English is not the test of whether or not you're a citizen. Perhaps it should be part of the test, but it's not. Now, that's her deal with God. We can discern, we can judge her by her fruits, we can see all that. She's the one who's going to have to explain to Jesus why, when she's wearing the costume of pastor, cosplaying as pastor, why she chose to lie and lead people astray. Because Jesus has a special warning for false teachers. The Bible's filled with this. Now, she's certainly responding to a mental siege. Chicago is under siege. Right now, it's a mental siege. Mental siege is on purpose. It is to terrify people. It is to put people in the same sense of terror that has caused young black men to make terrible decisions when pulled over by cops, like becoming terrified and refusing to comply because they're convinced that they're going to be unalived. And if you were terrified that you were going to be unalived every time you're pulled over, you might make bad decisions as well. So much of this is by design. And it's not helped when there are so-called journalists, like this woman, Laura N. Rodriguez Pereza, a senior journalist at the Chicago Tribune, reporting on immigration, community, and culture. She posted this on Twitter, and she wrote a very disturbing video from today's ICE CPB operations in Avondale. An officer pushes a woman to the ground. People get angry and throw what seems to be a rock towards the moving, unmarked vehicle. This appears to be the new normal in Chicago. Let's run the video. It's horrible and disturbing. Look at that. Look at that.
Get up.
Let's run that again. In a second. Okay, so now the band feeds off. Let's run that again. So it's a white van, and there's this woman. She's just walking down the street. She's minding her own business, having this conversation with this officer, and he just shoves her straight to the ground. Wow. Unthinkable. Unthinkable. And it's an unmarked car. How dare it be unmarked? Well, because they're doxing officers, because they're tracking down who rented what vehicle, because they're tracking them to their points of departure. Man, good thing that journalist was there to catch all that or have someone send it to her. And wait, is there more? Oh, yeah, there's more. See, you need clips like this for the mental siege, because the mental siege is everybody's at risk, and that was just cold-hearted. So I'll show you them more in a second. There's a movie that you might say is a form of mental siege, except it's based upon what's happening in the UK and Scotland and the EU. There have been many, many attempts to make the Bible hate speech. Literally, in Scotland, there was a law that was very near passed that would have made the possession of the Holy Bible a hate crime because the Bible contains hate speech. There's a bill making its way through Canada that will allow the prime minister to have your phone turned off and your internet access turned off because you pose a threat through speech. By possessing speech, making speech. So this movie years ago would have been unthinkable, would have been a terrible plot. Right now, this is very much real world. It's called Disciples in the Moonlight. It's set in America. America slightly in the future, where the Holy Bible has been outlawed because it contains hate speech. Instead, there's the Truth Bible, like the heretical love story Bible that a leftist pastor created for kids that pretends God has never caused a plague. God did not flood the world. Wouldn't do that. It pretends. Or Bibles that are now degendered. Bibles that teach that God himself is so-called transgendered, like the Truth Bible. So Disciples in the Moonlight has that as part of its script. It also has 12 brave people who decide to go out and smuggle Bibles. And they're smuggling them in a very unique way. In fact, my favorite part of this movie is the Easter eggs at the end. I love it when I think I'm watching the whole film and I get to the end and realize, wait a minute, rewind. That's how they got the Bibles in. And by the way, some of the disciples in this actually die. Wasn't prepared for that. Some of them are terrible people. Save from being good disciples, they're being terrible fathers. In other words, it's real life. Go watch this at angel.com/Todd. That's angel.com/Todd. It's called Disciples in the Moonlight, angel.com/Todd. Join the Angel Guild. And when you do that today, you're not just watching, you're helping to get brave, bold Christian filmmaking made. It's angel.com/Todd. So there is, in fact, more to the story in this mental siege in Chicago. See, it wasn't just that the woman was walking down the street having a conversation. Here's the more to this, and this comes from Trish McLaughlin, Trish for Ohio. She's an assistant secretary of the Department of Defense. She said this back to the journalist. Somehow you left this part out, at least to pretend to be objective. This is so embarrassing for your profession. Here's part 2 of the video. This is the woman who is pawing at the officer. She's pawing at the officer, grabbing him, and now tries to go hands-on with him. If you are going to go hands-on with an officer and you're going to get near his weapon, you are going to get shoved. And in fact, she does get shoved. So right back at this is the Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security, Trish McLaughlin. But there's yet another video. We'll get to that in a second. The mental siege is this, that they're just grabbing black and brown people, taking them off the streets, non-citizens. Why wasn't she arrested? Is it because she's white? She actually assaulted an officer, and yet she's let go. So let's watch a fuller version of the video. This comes from a different angle. And the woman is pawing at the officer, pawing at him, hitting him, screaming at him, and then she attempts to put her hands on him and grab him where he is vulnerable. And boom, she gets pushed down. That's the full video. There it is. When you make multiple attempts to paw at an officer, to slow his progress, and then to grab him, you are going to get pushed. And that woke fake and pastor says it's just this siege. These federal cops are laying siege. Why isn't she in cuffs? Dime Store Obama had something to say about this, adding to the mental siege. Good thing he's not a good speaker, or he might be actually able to scare people.
You heard the speaker suggest to you guys the Democrats are acting like terrorists, holding the American people hostage right now in order to get what you want. You want to just quickly respond to that?
Well, that type of language is reckless, it's irresponsible, and it's going to get someone killed. What do
Dime Store Obama's team has been calling Trump Hitler for 8 years. For 8 years, they've been doing this. They've been asking for street violence for 6 years. They've been amping up the rhetoric since Charlie Kirk was taken to the Lord. And they're telling people that Chicago's under siege by federal authorities who are grabbing the black and brown people because they're black and brown, citizen and non-citizen alike. But yes, referring to hostage taking financially is going to get people killed. Got it.